in this room. I want you to see how empty it is, because it's part of the story. And so for those of you that don't know, years ago, we started this notion of the discipleship project. This idea that I had, this brainiac idea that I came up with, that I would one day decide that I'm going to launch my own ministry, I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm not going to work for anybody, and I'm going to start something. And even before that it was the Discipleship Project, I launched this really cool ministry that I called Sync. I don't know why I called it that. And I tried to bring all these people together for this big conference. I don't know why. And I had worship, and I had speakers, and I had a really cool place booked. I needed 2,000 people to show up to this event to make sure that this ministry could get started. I even had someone set me up as a nonprofit. I had tax-deductible donations in place. I had everything that I needed to make sure that all of this was good to go. I had a whopping 85 people show up. That's it. So much so that I told the bands, three bands that I hired, I couldn't pay them. I was one of the speakers, so I didn't pay myself. And I told the other speaker, guess what? I can't pay you either. I can't pay anybody. All I managed to be able to do was raise enough money to pay for the venue. And that was it. After that, I gave up. I shut down. I said, forget it. I'm not doing it. I don't want to do this anymore. This is stupid. I give up. I quit. I'm just going to go back to doing what I was doing. Several years later, right around the pandemic, started it again, tried it again, started to launch Steve Kozak Ministries. And here I'm going to do this thing. Went to everybody that I knew. I sat down, I had a big piece of paper, and I had all this stuff laid out and figured out and done and ready to go. And here's all the stuff that we're going to do. And I sat down with somebody who I consider to be a world-class mentor. And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, "You don't know what you're doing. You don't have a plan." And I said, "What are you, nuts? Of course I have a plan. How can you think that I don't have a plan?" I left that meeting, that lunch, and I was ticked off, and I said, "Forget you. I can do this on my own. I don't need you." I failed at that too. Totally failed. Rock bottom failed. Went back. In fact, at that point, I decided, forget ministry, forget trying to speak on stage, forget pastoring, forget everything. I don't want to do any of it. I was so tired and done with that. Just didn't want to do it. I just was sick and tired of failing, sick and tired of asking people for money, sick and tired of doing any of it. That was until we had a nice long break. God provided us a really nice Sabbath to kind of just take a step back and say, you know what? Try this again in a little while. So I came up with this whole notion of what I called the Discipleship Project. I don't even know where I came up with that name. I just had this heart and passion for families, for understanding and helping people really just figure out how to better raise our kids to know and love Jesus, to live a life as a family that's way more Jesus-centered. You know, that thing where instead of just putting Jesus as a part of your life, you make Jesus the center of your life, and everything in your life is viewed through Jesus himself, so that you truly understand what it means to follow Jesus. That's amazing. I was like, there it is. Now I've got something. But just time, and it just sat there and sat there and sat there. And I think a couple times my wife told me that the name was terrible and she didn't like it. And I just said, okay, fine. And I just wrote. I'm just going to write stuff, and that's all I'm going to do. Well, then my son started racing. He's 9 years old. He races quarter midget race cars. And we started spending every weekend at the track. My wife and I started talking to each other. I thought, all right, how can we bring ministry to the track? And then that's it. Light bulb turned on. Here we go. Now we're into it. Now we've got something. Because now we've got a community of people that we love, we're invested in, and we see all the time, we travel with, we know intimately, we've developed these deep, lasting relationships with these people, and we've earned ourselves some credibility as part of the community. So we decided to take an absolute leap of faith and say, we're going to go and we're going to do something. And I woke up this morning in the middle of all of this as like I said, living room is empty. There is no couch and there is no chairs and there is no rug because we sold it all. We got rid of it. I just sold the kids' bed frames. We are clearing out the garage. We are getting rid of almost everything that we own because it won't fit inside a motorhome. Because we are going to purchase a motorhome after we sell our house in just a few days. And we are going to hop on the road and we are going to travel track to track as trackside chaplains ministering to the community that we are a part of. And what we realized, my wife and I realized this morning, what an incredible leap of faith that was. And I don't think we fully understood it until we got some documents. We need to, the closing on the house and starting to sell stuff and an empty room and it's echoing and you're constantly reminded that all of this stuff is gone. All of the creature comforts, all of the first world comforts that we live in every single day are gone. And we're in this great big house that we've lived in for almost 7 years. It's about to be gone too. And we're like, what are we doing? And all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, this is going to require some incredible faith. And I think so much of it, looking back on just the last few months, so much of it, it's been dependent on our ability to get the house ready to be sold, on our ability to do things that we need to do to make sure that it all goes according to our plan. But what happens when your plan is completely disrupted because God had a different plan? Because if he wants you to go minister, and he wants you to get engaged in somebody, he wants you to do something, he's got a plan and a purpose and a whole design for what he needs you to do, how he has made you and created you and equipped you in such a way that you can go out and do very specific work for his kingdom. He needs you to be able to do it for his glory, not for yours. So then all of a sudden, he likes to take things away and make things just a teensy bit more difficult than you might want. So this morning I woke up and this just popped into my head. Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the reality of what is hoped for, the proof of what is not seen. For by it our ancestors won God's approval. Listen to that again. Faith is the reality of what is hoped for, the proof of what is not seen. And I think what we do is we say, hey, faith is the reality of what is hoped for. I hope for this, and I want this, and I'm going to go for this, and I'm hoping that God does this, and you hope, and you hope, and you hope, and you hope. And we forget the rest of that. It's the proof of what we haven't even seen yet. There's stuff that God is doing in the background. There's things that God is at work on that you and I do not even know or understand. And I know what I did in my past is that before I gave God a chance to let some of those things come to fruition, I gave up. And my encouragement today is that wherever God has called you to and whatever God has given you to do, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how crazy it may sound, no matter how obnoxiously weird it is, or how impossible it might seem, that maybe we give God the time to allow for him to work in the background and to do some things that we don't expect. Because it's more than just what we hope for. It's the reality of what we haven't seen. It's giving God a chance to do what he needs to do in his time. I think to myself, was it God preparing me? He knows I'm going to screw it up. He knows I'm going to give up. He knows all of that. But is there a part of him, and it makes me wonder, and I don't know, this probably isn't theologically correct, but it does make me wonder that every time I gave up, did it break God's heart just a little bit? Like, oh, come on, Steve, why did you do? I had this for you. It was ready to go. I think now, it maybe, hopefully, he's saying, oh, it's about time. Thank you. And so let that be your encouragement today. Don't give up on what God's plan is for you, even if there's bumps and roadblocks along the way. Continue, persevere, keep working, keep praying, keep reminding yourself that God is working on your behalf. That's the kind of faith that he wants us to have. That's the kind of belief that Christians ought to have. That's the kind of stuff that stops the rest of the world in their tracks to look at us and go, what is different about these people? That produces conversations that change the lives of other people, the people that God places in our lives, the people around us. So don't give up on what God has planned for your life. Dig in and let your faith be built by what God is doing in the background.